Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Healed and Chilled. I am excited because we have another awesome and amazing, wonderful special guest. And you guys already know how I like to do it here. I like for the guest to have control of the narrative. So, if you would, in your own words, from your own point of view, can you please introduce yourself and we will dive right into the interview?
Okay, well, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Yes, so I am Greta Okomo. I'm the founder and CEO of Collaborative Change Consulting. I'm originally from Virginia, and so I moved around a lot, but I am back in Virginia. And I was actually saying to someone the other day, I think I always find myself back in Virginia because I call it the 3 hour radius that I love about Virginia. Because this weekend we actually went to the beach area and yeah, and it's about 3 hours away from where I live. And I was like, but we could also go to the mountains, and that's like about 3 hours or less. We could also,
Okay.
um, there's all environments you can be in. You can be in the city, you can be rural. So I love Virginia, and I love what just the atmosphere and the nature aspect of it. But yeah, originally from Virginia, and I started collaborative change consulting a few years ago after working in higher education administration for about 20 years. And I worked in multicultural leadership and team engagement and inclusion initiatives. And I was very passionate about that. I loved working with the students and just being with them, focusing on their engagement and advocacy for them, in particular. Um, Underrepresented students,
Mm,
students of color. And at some point along my journey with higher ed, I really realized the piece of it that really always called to me and spoke to me was the ability to create community, the
mm,
ability to affirm people, affirm them, allow them to have a voice, to have agency, and to start to break down walls and barriers based on connection and community and the ability to really get to know who somebody is in order to break down those walls. One of the things I say is that a lot of what happens in a lot of our environments is that we just don't know who each other is, right? We
yeah.
don't know who each other is, what really fuels us, what our values are. Um, and what makes us us, right? What helps us,
Mhm.
go through every day. We don't really know that about each other. And so when I started collaborative change consulting, that's in and of its name. The change happens because in collaboration, in community, in connection, the change happens when we have a foundation of trust, respect,
Mm,
and understanding of one another. And so for me in my work in higher education, what I saw, I mean, I started as a student aide in a student aide in the office, in a multicultural office in my undergrad. And I worked my way up from, grad student to assistant director, associate director, director, and senior level positions. And I think what, stood out to me in all those different roles and the different roles that I played was that the teams that did the best and also the institutions that did the best were led by people who really sought to really understand the people that they work with and
mm,
treated them as individuals and built a system of trust and respect and also to maximize everyone's strengths. Those were the teams that I found were the most sustainable, the most
mm,
successful, and just an atmosphere that you can be creative, be innovative. And those were the teams that always thrived. So that's what I built collaborative change consulting to do. And that kind of brings me here and what I'm doing now with collaborative change consulting. So maybe that was a long-winded way of introducing myself, but here we are.
yeah, and I always say if you can't be long-winded in a podcast where someone's asking you questions about yourself, you're probably not in the right space. So this is a good space. Tell everything you want to tell. This is the time to do that for sure. So there were a few points that I wanted to really highlight is storytelling and then how that relates to teams and things. So why,
Mhm.
so it's like a two-part question. What is so important about being able to tell your story? And then how does that relate to having a good team? Is it because you know how people communicate, you know about their background? Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, thank you for that. I think storytelling is so vitally important because we make a lot of assumptions about people, right?
Yeah, that's
And
true.
I show an image of an iceberg when I do a lot of the presentations to show that there's that line, right? There's that line of most of the iceberg is below the surface. They say about 90% of
Yeah,
an iceberg is below the surface. And a lot of times what we see is a 10% above, right?
yeah.
And in particular, at a lot of like organizations, workplace environments, we see that 10% that, I call is, our curated highlight reel, right? It is, it's like basically what's on your resume, maybe boosted up a bit, but it's kind of your education, maybe where you're from, it's all these kind of highlight moments, but it doesn't get into the root, or what my mom would say from Texas, the root of where you are from, right?
Right.
And what motivates you and what your true values are, and what how that then has shaped your perspective, your worldview, your work ethic, and just how you move about every single day. And especially in the workplace, sometimes we miss each other because we misunderstand someone's actions and motives, right?
Yeah.
And so storytelling is so important because once you start to hear what's below that surface, once you start to hear, oh, this person is from, a small town from here, right? And they grew up with their grandparents and they grew up with certain values and, you know, um, or whatever you learn about somebody, you go, oh, okay, right? It
Yeah.
starts to everything start like you have sort of this like puzzle, right? And a lot of times with us, we're seeing an unfinished puzzle of somebody, and we think
Hmm.
that is the entirety of who they are, and it's not. And the thing about storytelling, it allows people to really understand someone else's humanity. It
Mm.
builds your empathy and compassion because what you realize very quickly is that most people have been through very challenging times in their lives. Even
Yeah.
if on the surface their life looks amazing, they have it all. They have
Yep.
a great job, they have their great family, they have it's all check, 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 and it looks very good maybe on social media. But then
Yeah.
you hear the backstory of, oh, you know, they may have, you don't know how someone grew up. You don't know what hardships or obstacles they got. Maybe they did go to that college, but they went on complete scholarship and they worked throughout the whole time. And,
Right.
they barely made it. And, and they had to live in their car for a little bit. Like you never know what someone has been through. So I think the power in storytelling is that you get a more complete picture of someone. And so once you
Mm.
have a more complete picture of them, I think it is, then you can connect to them in a different way, and move forward from there. And I think again, and move forward in ways that one help you understand. I had a lot of assumptions here, and we all carry a lot of assumptions, a lot of
Yeah.
biases about people. And
Yep.
those assumptions and biases really do impact how we connect with each other, how we respond to people, how we move forward, why we do what we do. And then when those things start crumbling, because you realize, oh, I knew barely anything about this person. And now I
Right.
understand, you may understand, now I understand why this is so important to them. Why like us moving forward with this, in the way like certain things, maybe how we interact with our customers or with the students or whatever area that you work in, or the way they communicate in this manner. Maybe they communicate in a very direct manner because they grew up in a place where direct communication was needed, right? and,
Hmm.
and for your survival in some way, it's like I couldn't beat around the bush.
Yeah.
I had to say what I needed to say and move
Right.
on, right?
Right.
And so it's not to be rude, it's nothing against you, it's just the way I communicate. So I think that's the power in storytelling, and I think it connects people on a deeper level, on a human level, and uh, allows you to understand if everybody has this going on in their lives, then we need to be a lot more intentional about how we
Yes.
interact with one another.
Very well said. And it made me think, just about how sometimes, especially when I'm talking to like younger people or even from my own experience, it's like, well, why is such and such treating me like this? I don't even know this person, or why are they doing that? And it took me a while to realize they already have a preconceived notion about every single person they interact with
Yeah.
based on things from the past, based on how they view themselves and how they view others. So a lot of times when people treat you a certain type of way that isn't too great or that is great or that makes you feel icky or anything, it's because they just see you, they put you in this box because in the past that is what you look like and what you represent was this box, and that's how they kind of like box people out. So it's really important, I think, that we don't take things personally, but it's challenging sometimes, and as a child it can be confusing. And I say that to say it takes a very aware person to even notice that. And like how you were saying, how you noticed that the teams that had a closer story dynamic and knew more about each other and things like that were closer and had more creativity and more synergy. But there's even managers who don't notice those things that
Mhm.
are managing a team that is their team and they don't know
Right.
understand why the team can't get along. So what was it about you that you think that allowed you to even notice that, to come up with the concept for your business, to like be able to tie those strings together and like say, oh, this it correlates to this, and this is why your team isn't having synergy?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I've always been a very observant person. And I
Mm,
think I've always been someone who has felt like, I don't know, like maybe someone on the margins, I don't know if I've ever felt like I quite fit into any group. I remember growing up in school and I I liked everyone, right? And I was like
yeah.
kind of even curious about everyone, but I did notice that people kind of, and maybe it's a sense of feeling safer in groups and sort of grouping up and but I guess something that I did notice was that I don't know, it limited us. And I don't know if it
Yeah.
was because just, I don't know, I think growing up, I do credit my mother. We grew up and she had like a multicultural group of friends. And I remember
Mm,
that being kind of not the norm growing up
yeah.
in the area that I grew up in. And I just remember uh, her ability to just be very accepting of anyone of who they were, and really what it was about was like who they were at their core and the type of person they were, if they were kind people, good people, helpful. And that's, I don't know, I think that spoke to me. And I saw the impact of that, and that like true friendship and true connection really didn't have a whole lot to do. I think we put a lot of importance on like categories of people, like their racial background and, different, and, ethnic background or even age, things like that. And
Yeah.
I felt like that really would limit people from the level of connections they could have and the community of people they could have around them if they just chose to kind of engage with that person based on who they were at their core. And I don't know, I
Mm,
think I just observed that as a child. And I remember even in school, I got along pretty much with everyone. And I think I did have a tendency to, I think people did have the tendency to know that I was always sort of going to be the mediator or the person that would see, I don't know, kind of the universal side of things.
mm-hmm.
So I think that's kind of where it even started, from when I was younger and just observed how people interacted with one another. And that went on to my time. in my career as well. But I do also, for me, I think a pivotal moment was I was a first generation college student. So I was the first
Mhm.
person in my family to go to college. And I saw the big sort of cultural divide there, right? The cultural and like sort of social status divide in that
Yeah.
um, I was a very studious, young person. And, I love to write, I love to learn. So that piece of it, the purely academic piece of going to college wasn't a challenge. It was the navigating the cultural and social kind
Mm.
of differences that happen when you go into a college setting and the different types of people that you meet and the different environment. And so I think I was very aware of that as well.
Mm.
As I interacted with different people, I kind of saw the bubbles that people would put themselves in. I would sometimes interact with people and I could tell sometimes they had never interacted with someone in a meaningful way, with maybe someone who was Black
Mm.
or in a meaningful way with someone who maybe was from not like a more wealthier background, or things like
Oh.
that. And it was just interesting to kind of observe as well. And I think there was times where I was like, hey, I'm a person just like anybody else. Like you can
Right.
talk to me like you talk to anybody else. I'm not some like interesting, exotic, thing.
Right.
I'm from Culpeper, Virginia, so let's talk, let's chat. It'll be okay. Yeah, so I think that's where it comes from originally, and I think and I think that sort of being someone at the margins is someone I'll always identify with. So I think when it came to a profession, why being in higher ed and specifically working in spaces of like multicultural advocacy and diversity and inclusion, why I think that just fit for me, because again, I was somebody that was always looking for where are the spaces where we can be intentional about being inclusive for folks, and not just saying it on paper, but we're also doing it in actions and policies, and that anyone can come into a space, and that who they are, everything that they bring is welcome, is appreciated,
Mm.
and can be elevated in this space, and they can thrive, and that they don't have to dilute so many aspects of themselves to be able to navigate the space effectively.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that when people are able to tell their stories in a way that resonates with the audience, and whether that's a friend or a company or what, even themselves, really, I think it helps with like even emotional processing as well, because then you'll know like, hey, instead of thinking, oh, this person is judging me because of X, Y, and Z, it's like maybe I'm misunderstanding the situation because of how I grew up or because of how X, Y, and Z. So, um, and I also wanted to know, when you say storytelling, because that's a word that's been fluttering around in my atmosphere lately. But I
Mhm.
think for a lot of people, what do you mean when you actually say storytelling? Because a lot of people that are a little bit newer on their career journey or in this path in general, or haven't heard of it, might think of like, am I supposed to write a book about myself? Like, or what if I tell the wrong thing? So when you say storytelling, what does that mean? And then how do you use it to your advantage as like a tool for communication and getting people to really understand you?
Yeah, I guess when I say storytelling, it is about, I guess, sharing the pieces of yourself, kind of almost if you think about your life and almost in a visual map, kind of what has been the sequence of your life that has brought you to where you are now. And you can sort of in within yourself select kind of these the trajectory of, like, for me just saying, it started with, for me just sort of sharing my mindset even from my childhood, then it building on why I went into the profession that I did and what helped me gravitate into what I am doing now. So with storytelling, I don't know if I have a like exact definition for it, like a textbook definition, but I think it's about the ability to share the pieces of your life that allows other to understand your perspective, worldview, and motivations more clearly.
That makes perfect
And
sense.
Okay, okay. Yeah, if I were to give like a definition, I would say that is what storytelling is. And why I feature that in some of the workshops and work that I do is that it allows people, like again, goes back to allows people to see your humanity and allows you to for people to connect with you beyond the role that you have in your workplace, right? So whatever position you may have, that is how people are relating to you of you
Mm,
are the whatever and this is you're the I don't know HR person and you do these things, you are the manager and you're in charge of these certain things, and not, telling you your story allows people to humanize you and allows people to say this is Ayana, and um you know it gives you a more well-rounded aspect of who you are,
mhm,
beyond the specific role in that workplace. And so people can relate to you as a fully realized individual as opposed to just the role that you play. And I think that's so important in the workplace to understand the bigger picture of someone and then how to then interact with them that um how to interact with them that allows you to show up for them with the best parts of you and for them to show the best parts of themselves. And also, too, I think it's a key role in allowing people to build trust with
mm,
one another and to build respect with one another, because I do think those terms are just thrown out there so much.
mhm.
This is, trust, building trust, building respect. And I think respect in particular is one of those things that we find there are cultural nuances to that, right?
Yes.
What that looks like, what it sounds like in behaviors as well. And I think sometimes we misunderstand each other because one person's behavior may be interpreted as like very extremely rude or disrespectful to someone else, and the other person's like, what happened, what did I do, like I don't understand.
Yes.
And that can really break and sever a relationship and break down trust very quickly, and
Yes.
you don't even understand what happened between you and the other person. Right. So I think storytelling helps that because if people here, like, like I was saying, a lot of times within storytelling, people will talk about their family origin or their background and how they related to one another. How did you show respect to one another? What were some highlights? Where were some foods that you ate, or what are some sayings? And, who are the people that really developed and, formed who you are? And if sometimes people will say, it was so important, like my grandparents or certain people in their lives, and they really respect their elders. And so if you show up in the workplace and you have folks who are older than you or they have certain status, there are certain cultures and certain people who will always defer to you because you are older, or you have a certain
Yeah.
status. And sometimes people don't understand that. They're like, hey, speak up more, just like, hey, just
Mhm.
tell me, and or whatever. And not understanding, hey, no, I'm not going to say that to you, right? Or you have to create an environment where you understand that they're not going to maybe push back or give you say, well, maybe that's not going to work, or give you an alternative because you are their supervisor or you are in a certain status with them, and whatever you say, ask them to do, they're just going to do. Even
Mhm.
if they feel like it may work better doing something else, they may not say that to you because they figure, hey, you're the boss, right?
Right.
So who am I to tell you what to do? And if you're from different cultures, you may not understand that sense of honoring elders and the sense of hierarchy and how you communicate with others. So I feel like storytelling helps bring out those pieces of people so you have a better understanding of who they are. And yeah, it helps you get to those layers of what, we say these terms, but what does it look like for you? What does it mean to you? What does that
Mhm.
look like for you? How do I build trust with you? How do I show respect to you? I know what it looks like for me, but what does it look like for you?
Mm. Okay, that makes perfect sense to me. And
Okay.
so that brings us into the next part. You mentioned you're doing like, and I know you do workshops and things. So can you elaborate a little bit more on what you do as a business profession? And then at what point should someone seek out your assistance? Is it like when they're starting out, when they're coming up on a specific problem? When should they get you involved?
Oh, excellent. Yeah, I think they can get me involved at any stage. Um,
Period.
Right. Yeah, just contact me, let me know. But so with collaborative change consulting, like I said, the work that I do focuses on leadership consulting and also personal growth coaching, and I also do some inspirational keynote speaking. And the foundation of the work that I do is about connection. And so
Mm,
one of the taglines I have is intentional and authentic connection is the foundation of personal and organizational success, right? Is the ability to connect with each other in an authentic way, an intentional and authentic way.
mm,
So the work that I do is I do leadership training that focuses on building, as I was talking about before, building trust, respect, and what I call cultural fluency or cultural understanding. Meaning, cultural fluency is the ability to have an understanding of your own sort of cultural worldview and perspectives and have an understanding that other people have theirs as well. And how do we now interact with one another again with trust and respect, knowing that we are different people and different doesn't mean bad in any way. It just means
mm.
different. And how do we honor that for both of us and have a shared goal that we're working towards? And so the work that I do focuses on that within teams. So I do a lot of like team building kind of topics, and it's about cultivating respect, um, honoring values, um, a lot of those type of topics that I focus on, just how to create an inclusive workplace environment. I have one specifically on storytelling and how that builds authentic connection in the workplace. So those are a lot of like the leadership development or training topics that I focus on. And the personal growth topics are really about personal empowerment, about building your self-worth, your self-belief, reclaiming your voice, reclaiming your joy. And I have one in particular now that's specifically towards women and women's empowerment called Reclaiming Your Muchness. So that's one that I'm actually doing this spring and summer. So this spring and summer, I'm doing a team building training called Connect, Align, and Thrive. And I'm doing Reclaiming Your Muchness, which is the women's empowerment coaching program that I'm doing. And so that is the work that I do. And if folks want to come to me, I say come to me when for teams, I think any stage of the process.
Mm.
So I would say if you are a team that is new, a new team, be excellent to bring me in so that you can create this foundation from the start, create a foundation of building, of making connections with one another, authentic connections, building that sense of trust, building that sense of respect, and building how you will communicate and interact with one another so that everyone feels building a sense of psychological safety and inclusion with everyone. So any stage of the process, so if you're a new team, if you are a transitioning team, so I know a lot's going on in the world now, so there may be a lot of turnover happening in
Yeah.
teams. So you got turnover, new people are coming in, people are leaving. Some people are having major transition in leadership itself. So leaders are transitioning in and out. And so there may be some sense of instability. So I think any stage of a team, if you're a new team, if you're a transitioning team, if you're a team that has experienced a lot of turnover, uh, my team building and my leadership training work, I think would be a great foundation for you. And something that I say a lot about the way that I approach the work, the way that I approach the work and how I engage with my clients is also me role modeling, wanting you to mirror how you treat one another. And so I do say that, we'll laugh and learn with one another. A lot of times people work with me And sometimes there's a sense of people being afraid because they think there's going to be a heaviness, to
Mm.
doing this work. And then in particular, if you're starting to talk about, cultural differences or maybe biases or
Oh
conflict and
yeah.
tensions you may have. And people get really afraid that it's going to just go to a really negative place and you can't bring it back. And that is something I would have to say is that I'm able to navigate those type of environments in a very safe way for everyone. Because I've been in some high stakes spaces, right? And people
Yeah.
have been very defensive and we have worked through it, and sometimes
Hmm.
people will say some things where you're like, wow, where like,
I'm sure.
why are you going there with that? Why
I'm
are you going
sure.
there? Why do we need to go there? But we went
Yep.
there, so let's work it out, right? Especially there was one time where one person started talking about slavery and that his family owned slaves and
Oh,
they treated them well and it was I don't know why that came about. I don't even know we were talking about a topic
oh
anything
man.
related to that, but and it was like, okay, we are going there. We have gone there.
Mm.
So let's work it out. And we did. We did. It's a long story. Maybe it was for another time. You can bring me back and we can talk about how we
Yeah.
processed through that. But that's the thing about, and that's the thing. That's the real, right? Because the thing about that environment, there was some tension because it was multi-generational, group, multi-generational, multiracial, multi-ethnic. And so there were some tensions and some spaces, with different people. And we were able to that came to a head during that session. So, and that's the real of, working with people and being in community. That is the real. There will be tension sometime. There will be
Yeah.
conflict. And we can get through it. We don't have to, it doesn't have to get so contentious that we can't make it to the other side because we can. So I think that for me, that process is something that I think I navigate really well and help people feel safe doing it. And then with the empowerment coaching, I like to do, and everything that I do is mostly group because I do think there is the power of us learning from one another. And like I said, collaborative, because sometimes
Yeah.
I think in isolation, that is not how we're engaging with one another. We're not kind of just it's not always one to one. We're interacting as a group, as a team. Um, and there is, I think, knowledge and there is experience and there's so much you get from other people that you then when I leave, I do my coaching and when I leave, that is still there, and that it is still there. The wisdom of the group is still there. The experience, the knowledge, everything that they bring is still there, and you can tap
Right.
into that. Um, and so I like to role model that as well. And yeah, as far as the coaching goes, as far as the self-empowerment, I think it's for specifically the Reclaiming Your Muchness program is
Hmm.
it's specifically for women, but at some point I think I'll open it up to any group of people who are interested. But now the sessions I'm doing right now are specifically for women, just because from my experience, I find that women really connect to this topic in particular when I say reclaiming your muchness and your muchness being, your authentic self, your core self, and that piece of yourself that fuels, your joy, your courage, your confidence, your direction, and just, your fearlessness, your grit, that piece of yourself that's like, I'm going to do this no matter
Yeah.
what. I got this no matter what.
Absolutely. And I would like if you can dive a little bit more into the munchness part because I thoroughly enjoyed hearing the story of how you selected the word munchness and where that particularly came from. Can you break that down a little bit more?
Yeah, so muchness. So that term actually comes from the 2010 version of Alice in Wonderland. And it had Johnny Depp and Helena Bonham Carter was the Red Queen. There's a lot of people in it. It was a really good film, really good
Mm-hmm.
adaptation of Alice in Wonderland. But there is a scene in that film where the Mad Hatter is talking to Alice, and he tells her, "Okay, it's time now to slay the Jabberwocky." And the
Mm.
Jabberwocky is just like this monster beast creature that the Red Queen would always bring out when the opposing forces would try to take over. And she would just take, bring out the Jabberwocky and it would just, take everybody,
Mm-hmm.
all the opposing forces out. And as you know, with the Red Queen, if you're not familiar, the Red Queen, she was like very violent
Yes.
and very tyrannical.
Yes.
She's the off with your head, off with your head. So that's how she dealt with
Mm-hmm.
everything. She just, kind of killed everybody, decimated everyone. And so he said, okay, it's now time to slay the Jabberwocky. And she was like, me? Nah, I can't do that. Little me? Absolutely not. She was like, I don't even know what version of me that could do that. And he said, well, you've done it in the past because Alice would come to Wonderland several times. And I think she would sort of forget every time, but she would come and she had slayed the Jabberwocky before. And he was like, that's what you do. You slay the Jabberwocky. You're
Right.
right. You're that girl. And so yeah, he said, okay, he said, you aren't the way you were before. You've used to be much more muchier. You've lost your muchness. And
Mm.
that's what he says to her. So so something sparked in me where I thought about that and I was like, yeah, I think that does happen to us. And
Mm-hmm.
I really thought about that connection with Alice of what happens to Alice. She goes into this, environment and she shrinks. When she needed to
Yep.
shrink, she has to shrink. When she needs to get bigger, she has to get bigger. She's like contorting herself so much to be able to navigate the environments that she's in, not only in Wonderland, but even outside of Wonderland, her real
Yep.
life. She didn't really feel like she fit into that. She was wealthy and, she didn't want that life of just marrying rich and, and just kind
That's
of
that.
living a leisurely life. Um, so I felt like that relates to us in life, and in particular women, that we sometimes, somewhere along the way, we make decisions based on how others perceive us and what others want from us or what other people say is the thing to do. You need to do
Mm.
this now, you need to do that now, and this is how you should do this, and this is how you should do that.
Yep.
And like I said, you're contorting yourself, you're always shifting yourself to fit into different environments that somewhere along the way you lose yourself.
Mm.
And you lose yourself to the point where you're kind of like, I don't even know who I am anymore. And the things that you sort of kind of, I say, like, you sort of jettison them, you kind of threw them off along the way so that you could fit into environments. Those things that you abandoned are also the things that will help you prosper, that will help you get to where you want to go, that will help you be successful, that will help you be joyous. All those things that you felt like you had to abandon to fit in are the things that you needed, right?
Yep.
So it's called reclaiming your muchness. So it's getting back to that, your core self. What was that within you? What was that in you that allowed you to, like I say this in a talk that I do, what was it in you that allowed you to slay that Jabberwockies or the Jabberwockies that you have in life? And we all
Mm.
have Jabberwockies. It could be depression, it could be anxiety, it could be self-doubt, it can
Yep.
be, you may have some challenges learning, challenges are physical. You may have a chronic illness. What are those Jabberwockies in your life? Because how you defeat those, right? How you slay those ones are when you get back to your core and who you truly are, because
Yep.
that's where all your strength comes from. So it's about not diluting that within yourself. It's about reclaiming it.
Yes, yes, yes. And I'll share a quick personal story that I thought of while you were saying that.
Hmm.
When I first got out of school, I was at this sales job and we had to do like sales training, and it was like retired sales reps who came back to like judge us basically.
Hmm.
And I was getting pretty good scores, like eight and nines out of tens and things. And then there was this one older dude, and he told me that I had too much energy and I needed to
Hmm.
tone down because, I had too much energy. So I was like, what? So I listened And I toned down, and then I started getting sevens and sixes. And I'm like, wait a minute, what's
Wow.
happening here? So then I was like, you know what? I'm going to go back to doing what I was doing before. And then I
Mhm.
got my first 10 when I brought my energy back. So it's just interesting, like what you're saying. I purposefully diluted my munchness, my personality, my charisma because one person who was giving me a score said it was too much. But then when I brought it down, then I wasn't doing well. So, I think that just goes back to what you were saying. And so perhaps he was a jabberwocky of mine on my path towards growth. And just because one person might feel a type of way about something or interpret my personality because of their own story that they've built up doesn't
Right.
mean that I then need to go and shift my whole Alice and now suddenly I can't get the good score because now I done let the Jabberwocky win. So I
Right.
definitely relate to that. Also, we are coming up a bit on the tail end. I do have some I do have some two different parts I want to get into. But before that, was there anything that you wanted to talk about that you haven't yet had the opportunity to discuss or relay to us?
No, I think I've said a lot.
Yeah, which is good, which is
Yeah.
good. It helps. It helps me when sometimes it's the opposite, and I'm like, what am I gonna ask? Because you didn't say anything. So
Okay. Yeah,
I didn't
that's
have anything.
usually not an issue for me.
Which is a good thing. Good thing. Good thing. Alrighty, so this is the part where I like to flip the script a little bit. And
Okay.
if you had any questions for me or if you wanted to give thanks to anybody or shout anybody out, you can do one or both of those things now because you are in control.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, one, I want to thank you so much
Oh, thank
for
you.
just connecting with me and inviting me on this platform. I truly appreciate it, and also too, yeah, for you, I just want to just thank you for like just what I know about you and the work that you're doing. It is so vitally important, and I think it connects well to what I do in my empowerment coaching because I think some of it is getting that foundation when we're younger of having a sense of self-worth and self-belief and self-trust is so important because
Mm-hmm.
life is going to be full of jabberwockies. And if,
Yes.
if we're not prepared for that before we get into those situations, you will learn, you'll learn and sometimes you learn the hard way and you
Yeah.
navigate. But the more this is, a major thing that I've realized is that speaking life into into children and speaking positivity and affirmation and letting them know who they are beyond the physical, beyond all the great attributes they have as an individual, just pouring like love into them as much as you possibly can because the world is challenging, it's tough, and like you were
Mm-hmm.
saying, there's so many people who are so ready to be like, why are you doing this? Why,
Yep.
right? There's so many naysayers out there.
There
So
are.
I guess I don't think I have a question for you, but I just want to just thank you for the work that you do. And it's like,
Oh.
it is, I don't know, I think it is, I think there's so many levels of it. I think it's soul work really, and it
Mm.
is the work of just putting good into the world. And that is something that I think about as well, is that I think about my work sort of like a ripple effect. And
Yes.
I think sometimes we focus so much on like numbers and stuff, but the truth is that impacting one person's life has that ripple effect of
Mm.
then everybody else that they meet. So I really think about that, and I even visually see that of like every little drop of like affirmation and kindness and compassion and love that you pour into people, it then reverberates to even more people.
Mm.
So understanding the impact of your work and kind of the responsibility of it and being a good steward of that, that's what I really focus on my work too. I'm very
Yeah.
aware of how my work can impact other people, and I take it very seriously of I just want to be a good steward of it and lead with integrity and kindness. And I see that in the work that you do. So I just want to
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you. And, it's always like I agree with the ripple effect as well,
Mhm.
but sometimes it's also nice to hear it.
Hmm.
too, because it's like, okay, well, there's this that I want, and like, I just turned 30. So, and you mentioned about living more with intention. So that's what I'm trying to do this year and moving forward. Like, doesn't mean I don't have goals. Doesn't mean I don't have things that I, want to get checked off my bucket list or whatever. But just being more present and more like you said, like pouring into this child, I'll have no way of knowing fully what that impact did, but I at least can know that that particular child was impacted. And then hearing you saying, well, it impacts them and everyone around them. I hadn't put that into perspective. I feel like one of my students, like, I didn't think about it that way. So, I do appreciate that. Alrighty. So in closing, I have three cliche questions that I ask everybody. The
Okay.
first one is, if you can think of a time when you were younger and in a darker space, what's one piece of advice that you know now that you really wish you would have known back then?
Um, that everything will be fine.
Mm,
Um, you are enough
mm,
and you are good enough, you are enough, and you already have it in you.
mm.
Trust yourself.
Love it. You already got Alice in you. You got your munchness. Don't lose it.
Right. You got it.
Yes.
Yeah. You got it.
All right. The second question is, the world works in mysterious ways, just like the internet and the universe. All of them work in mysterious ways. So, is there any person or organization or group that you would really like to work with if this interview does come across their desk?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. Um, any group. Um, I don't know. I really haven't thought about it.
Or maybe like for speaking, or even if it's like a type of organization that you would like to speak in front of or work with or anything like that.
Oh, that's good. I don't know. I don't know if there's any specific but I would love to, I guess I'm just saying it now. I don't know if I've ever really verbalized this, but I would love to do a Reclaiming Your Muchness type conference
Ooh.
and feature, many different types of people like you and, people who are just doing this type of work of affirming people, amplifying their voices and, building up their like helping them build their like self-worth and self-trust and self-belief. So, actually, the person that I've thought about, I think would be a great performer for the Reclaiming Your Muchness conference. I would love to have like Fantasia Barrino.
Oh, okay.
I love her so much. And I think she has such a compelling story and
Mm,
somebody who I think, has a lot of challenges in their life, but, but keeps moving forward and has an
mm.
amazing talent and amazing story to tell, and to show people not, things don't always go, good in your life. You can have
Yeah.
major, major hardships and setbacks,
Yeah.
but you can still, you know, you can still move forward and be a great success in a lot of ways. So, yeah. So I don't know. That's the thing I've thought about, but yeah, that's a good question. I don't think I've really thought of a specific platform that I would like to be on, but I would love to create a platform to highlight many different people who are doing great
Yeah.
work.
Yes. Well, if anybody creates conferences and needs a thought processing, something, come here. And then also, if you know Fantasia and she can participate, let's make it happen.
Yeah,
Alrighty.
let's make it happen.
And then, yes. And then the last question, there's another like closing statement, but the last question is, if somebody wants to work with you specifically, what's the best way to contact you? And then if someone wants to keep up with what you're doing, like workshops and things, what's the best way to keep up with you and contact you?
Okay, excellent. The best way to contact me is through my website. So my website is collaborativechangeconsulting.com. And if you go on the website, there is a tab that says contact. And so you can contact me through there. And I think that's the best way. because it'll link you to my scheduling platform and then you can set up whatever type of meeting you want with me. So I think that's the best way, collaborativechangeconsulting.com. Um, Also, as far as how to keep up with me, I'm really active on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, and I do post to Instagram, but I think LinkedIn is where I'm most active. So
Hmm.
follow me on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, I'm Greta F. Okomo, or Collaborative Change Consulting LLC. Either way, I pretty much post the same thing on both pages. And what was the last question?
Oh no, that was it. And now
Okay.
I'll close up. Yeah, and I'll put any links and things in the description as well, so you guys can just go down there. But it's also important just to know how to get access to who you need to talk to. Before I give you this closing one, I want to give you a signature round of applause for a wonderful conversation. A lot of gems dropped. We talked about a lot of things here. So there are a few podcasts that I go back later. I'm like, okay, I know I missed a gem or two here. Let me see if I can get all the knowledge. So I think this is going to be one of those for sure. So I just appreciate you for sharing your wisdom, doing what you're doing, because it's very, very important, especially in today's day and age with everything. I don't have to go into it, but it's just important that people learn how to talk and communicate with each other. So I appreciate you for doing that. And then, in final statement, can you leave us off with some words of encouragement for the rest of?
Words of encouragement. I think, yeah, I don't know. I think I've said it before. I think that um I guess always know that that you are good enough, that there will be, trials and tribulations in your life, but you literally have everything within you to slay the Jabberwockies in your life.
Mm,
So, what's really important is that you continue to surround yourself with people who support you, who affirm you, um, and also to know that you create the life that you want to create for yourself. And I know there's times, especially when you're younger, when you don't have control over certain things in your life, but know that as you grow older and you become an adult, you carve the path that you want for your life. You build the life that you want for yourself, even if when you were younger you couldn't quite do all those things. You
mm-hmm.
have the ability to do it, and just believe in yourself and um, yeah, just I would say just believe in yourself. And I think whatever your background, if you are a person of faith of or some type of religious like faith in your life, also know that can feed you and supply you, and that there that you have that within you as well as a source of strength and direction and joy.
Yes, yes, absolutely. All right, thank you so much, Greta. This was a wonderful conversation. I know that
Thank
I got
you.
some gems of wisdom out of this, and I know that the listeners will too. All right, guys, that will be it for today's episode of Healed and Chilled, and we will see you guys, or well, you'll hear from me again coming up here soon. Have a great
Thank,
rest of your week.
thank you.